Hi everybody, welcome to another IndyCar. Today it's Wednesday the 7th of August. In the news today, well, what can I say? We've got two things I want to talk about today. One is the Labour Party's recent pronouncements from John McDonnell, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party in the UK. And also a little bit more about the Scottish Constitution, what's happening with that, what could happen with that, and what we hope will happen with that. So first of all, let's look at what's happening with the Labour Party. Ian Murray, the remaining, I think remaining is an interesting way to put it, the remaining Labour, Scottish Labour MP at Westminster, was wrong-footed entirely by the Deputy Leader of his own party yesterday, when MacDonald came out in an interview and said that when it came to another independence referendum, he claimed that that was for the Scottish Parliament to decide. And hinting without really any, not even hinting, it's a pretty clear signal that the Labour leadership in London is prepared to give Scotland an Indy Ref 2 if they get into power after a general election. And this, I think, is a sign that the Labour Party is manoeuvring itself into position for a general election, like a lot of other parties gearing up to look at the parliamentary arithmetic of what would happen if there's a general election. For example, if Boris Johnson loses a no confidence vote and there is a general election either before or after Brexit, but one way or the other. Now, what John McDonnell has said is really that the Labour Party is taking its hands off. It's not going to stick its oar in the water and say, no, you can't have an independence referendum. He's basically accepting the claim of right, that Scotland has the right to decide on the type of government it wishes that suits its needs, and it can decide that at a time of its own choosing. Now, that claim of right is written into the legislation of the Westminster Parliament. It was accepted without any opposition from any Westminster parties. Now, the Labour Party knows that, and I think MacDonald is playing to the gallery here. This is a little olive branch being held out to the SNP, I think, as a precursor, as a little bit of wooing, as a precursor to doing a deal with the SNP, so that if the Parliament is, as expected, a hung Parliament where you have the Conservative Party, the Brexit Party and the Labour Party all pretty much with around the same amount of votes, somewhere in the region of the 20-25% of the vote, maybe a little bit more, the 50 plus Scottish SNP MPs could make the difference between forming an opposition government to the Tories and not forming an opposition government to the Tories. Brexit itself could be stopped, and if it is stopped, that doesn't affect the need to have another independence referendum, because we have seen exactly what can happen if the British government is run by the Conservative Party and is taken out of the European Union against our wishes. If the Labour Party wants to continue with Brexit, they could, but if they promise a full referendum, completely legal, Section 30 in the works, to the SNP in exchange for a confidence and supply deal where, like the DUP is propping up the Tories at the moment, the 50 plus SNP MPs would help to form a government with the Labour Party and provide the necessary majority to get things done. Now, is it likely to happen? I don't know. I haven't done all the arithmetic for this. I'm sure there are people out there who are frantically doing that at the moment. Many others I've seen online today are ringing the alarm bells and saying, don't trust Labour, don't trust Labour. They lie all the time. The fact that this announcement was made without the knowledge of the Scottish Labour Party is interesting, because it shows that the Scottish Labour Party, like the Scottish Conservative Party, is now being cut loose by the British party system. So we've got the Tories cutting loose Ruth Davidson with this poll that shows that we are leading, the independence movement is leading with 52% in a British poll, in a British newspaper, sponsored by a Tory party grandee, someone who does not have the best interests of Scotland at heart. So we can pretty much safely say that the poll result from Lord Ashcroft is probably a massive understatement of the real truth of how much support there is for independence. So Ruth Davis has been rubbished by her own party, and now Uh, and now the Labour Party in Scotland has also had the rug pulled out from under it by the Labour Party in London. And I think the major parties are now seeing the writing on the wall. As far as Brexit and the general election and independence are concerned, they are all interlinked, all interdependent on one another. The SNP at the moment has got the luxury of being able to watch things unfold and to look at the options that are still open and on the table for Scotland. And one of those options might be to help the Labour Party get into power, but make sure that they have a written agreement from the Labour Party that the confidence and supply deal will hold up and that the Section 30 order will be instantly granted as part of that deal. Now, if that happens, that takes the brakes off the whole Indy Ref 2 and Section 30 order logjam, which is caused only, incidentally, by the Tory party. Whether you think Labour's trustworthy or not, there is an opportunity here which might come up, and it might be worth taking it in order to get our independence referendum at the point where we have the maximum amount of support for it. It's also noteworthy today to look on the pages of social media and have a look at several polls that have been published on Twitter in the last 2 or 3 days, where tens of thousands of people have voted across the UK and across Scotland on the issue of Scottish independence. And in both of the polls that I've seen so far, where the turnout for the Twitter polls has been somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 participants, so well past anything that Lord Ashcroft could produce. Both of those results were above, one of them was 74% for yes, and the other was 78% for yes. Now that gives you some idea of the real sentiment out there, as opposed to the Tory, sort of organised, the Tory commissioned poll. So we're at a stage where poll ratings are climbing gradually. We're going to see more and more polls saying more and more things. But what's interesting, I think, is the fact that the Labour Party is starting to respond to polls for independence and beginning to realise that they could ride the coattails of an independence referendum and boost their popularity north of the border, which, let's face it, would help the Labour Party. Labour has destroyed itself north of the border by the appalling behaviour they displayed in 2014 when they did the nasty, dirty work. They lied on the doorsteps. They sold out Scotland and its independence by telling lies. Are they going to be able to redeem themselves in this way? Probably not. But what they can do is they could get themselves elected, and the SNP could help them into power in England to maybe do something to stop the damage the Tories are causing in parts of England that are not Tory voted. At the same time, Scotland will get its independence referendum and it will be fully legal and fully recognised, and we can hold it as soon as we like. So there's an opportunity. Let's see what happens with this. Let's not write it off. The Labour Party has lied before. It will probably lie again, and Labour Party politicians in Scotland will just about say anything to get your vote. But John MacDonald is obviously thinking ahead. This is part of a Labour strategy, I believe, to reach out to the smaller parties for support, because a hung parliament is almost guaranteed in any general election that happens in the next few months. The one thing we can't afford is to have the Brexit party and the Tory party propping each other up, because that is another danger that we face at the moment that we need to pay attention to. Okay, so let's move away from what's happening in British politics and how the SNP might do a confidence and supply deal. And if it's good enough for the DUP and the Tories, then it's good enough for me. But we also have an issue in Scotland. I've already talked about the idea of using an election as a referendum, and that's something which I hope that the SNP will adopt as a plan B, and even a plan C if we go to a Holyrood election. But there's something else missing, and that something else is a constitutional document and a series of organised steps that Scotland needs to take to prepare itself to become an independent state. And one of those key things, and I've banged on about this before in the past, is a written constitution. The written constitution describes in great detail what the new country will be, what the rules are, what the responsibilities are of every citizen, every company, every politician, and what the benefits are, the pensions, the rights that you have as a human being, the rights you have to a job, to a home, to good food, the rights to an income sufficient to your needs. All of those things are written into a new constitution. The new constitution already exists. It was written over nearly 6 years by constitutional academic Dr. Mark McNaught, who lectures at the University of Rennes. I will actually be talking to Mark McNaught later this afternoon. He's in Scotland at the moment, observing what's happening with Brexit. And also he's here to help the SNP to develop their own version of the Constitution. Now, the Constitution which Mark wrote, and which has been contributed to by hundreds of ordinary Scots who have read it, amended it, added things to it, subtracted things from it, changed the wording of some things. That final vetted and edited version, the draft of it, is now in the possession of Michael Russell, who is the Scottish MSP, the minister who's charged with looking after Brexit arrangements, the constitutional affairs of Scotland. Mike Russell's seen it, he likes it a lot, and at the moment it's in his possession. The SNP has got the chance to read it through, and it runs to many pages. But one of the interesting things about Mark's constitution is it's not just a description of the new country, it's not just a rule book. It has a thing in it, built into it, called the constituent process. Now that just sounds weird, it sounds like something that you do to the voters, but actually the constituent process is a methodical, step-by-step journey from where we are now as a forced member of an exploitation colony to being a fully independent country. And those steps include revising and collating every single Scottish law that exists. And shall we say, not binning, but at least deactivating the most ancient laws which no longer apply. You know, so things that date back to the 11th century or whatever, that don't apply to modern life. And taking the whole of this body of law, known as the corpus of Scottish law, and making it accessible to every citizen. That's the first stage. That means that even before independence, every person in Scotland who's resident here would be able to read and understand Scottish laws and how they apply to you. And then there's a process by which these laws are ratified at Holyrood. They become then the basis of all the whole Scottish legal system. The identity of Scotland as an entity is set out in detail. And then there are steps by which the Scottish Government and the Scottish Parliament can build the institutions necessary and create those institutions before we vote on independence, so that we have a turnkey country, one that is ready for us to drive away, one that has a central bank, one that has a currency sorted out, ready to go, one that has an investment bank, something that's already there, one that has a tax office, something that's already there, one that has a benefits office, something which is being built as we speak today. All of these things are contained in this this journey document, the document which leads from where we are now to a fully fledged independent country with a written constitution with guarantees of human rights for everybody. And that basically is what I'm going to talk to Dr. McNaught about this afternoon, to find out where it stands with the SNP at the moment. In the past, the SNP's position has always been that they would wait until after independence to create a constitution. There have been several other constitutions written by other people, but nothing is detailed as the one that Mark McNaught has written. This is the Rolls-Royce of constitutions. Dr. McNaught is one of the world's leading authorities on constitutional law, and he has a particular interest in the American Constitution, which, as everybody knows, has got massive faults in it, particularly the rules concerning, or amendments concerning, gun ownership. Now that's something which is not going to happen in the Scottish Constitution. Dr. McNaught is very clear about several things that Scotland, he imagines, would be a republic. There would be no monarchy, but that is not something that is written in concrete. These would be Mark's own assumptions, let's say. But the Scotland that he imagines hasn't got a monarchy. We can choose a monarchy afterwards if we wanted to, or we could choose a president. These would be up to us. But it would have a currency, and it would have a written constitution. and it would have the rights of every individual and the responsibilities of every individual written and codified in that document. So everyone who lives in Scotland would know exactly what the country was all about and what was expected of them and what the rewards would be for them coming to Scotland and making their homes here. So it's all good. It's just a case really of, has the SNP changed its mind, and are they prepared perhaps to start debating the idea of starting the constituent process in preparation for launching the full document after independence. If we start the constituent process now, it means the country takes physical steps to enable itself to be independent from day one. In other words, within 18 months of a yes vote, the country is fully independent. It has negotiated itself out of the clutches of the British state, and it has full control over all its natural resources, its defences, its currency, its banking system, and everything else that goes with being a normal country. So these are the things that I'll be talking with Dr. McNaught about this afternoon. If you want to have a look at the Constitution, I will put up a link to it later on, because although it's quite a long document and there's a lot of detail in it, the basic principles of it are pretty straightforward. And the whole country is set out with equality for everyone, with human rights for everyone. Nobody is discriminated against. Laws will be tightened up on things like discrimination. Minimum wages will have to meet a certain requirement that allows an individual to live with dignity and with sufficient funds to have a meaningful life, no matter what their ability level. All of these things will be guaranteed in the Scottish Constitution, something which no other country, to my knowledge, has gone into such detail about. But we have the chance to create probably the most modern, the most progressive, and the most country that exists anywhere in the world at the moment, with this, as I say, Rolls Royce of constitutions. Anyway, that's about it for today. I'll be back again tomorrow, and also I will be hosting Scotland at 7 tomorrow night. At the moment, not sure the guest will be. It's possible it might be Mark McNaught himself, if I can talk him into coming into the studio tomorrow night. If not, we will have another guest on to talk about this week's political and other news stories in our usual format of chat and analysis over there between 7 and 8 p.m. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll see you in IndyCar again tomorrow, and as usual, if you have any comments, questions or suggestions, you can always message me on this page. I'll see you later. Bye bye for now.